Right then, part three. Before I was so rudely interrupted by this screencast-o-matic running out of time. Like I said, the juxtaglomerular apparatus. It is this little bit of tissue between the afferent and efferent arteriole. It likes to be hugged in there. Remember, your proximal distal convoluted tubule comes down and up, and it goes between the afferent and efferent arterioles before it goes to the distal convoluted tubules. That is where the juxtaglomerular apparatus is stored, right there. It likes to be hugged and feel loved. When it does not feel that blood pressure being adequate, it feels insecure. Okay, maybe it doesn't, but it releases this thing called renin. Renin then goes through the bloodstream to the liver and forces the liver to turn angiotensinogen to angiotensin. This cascade of events happens. Angiotensin then goes to the adrenal gland, tells the adrenal gland to release aldosterone, which tells the nephron to put sodium back in the blood because where sodium goes, water follows. So it's a nice cascade of events. The body is amazing, simply amazing all it does. So basically, juxtaglomerular apparatus tells the body we've got low blood pressure, gives off renin. The adrenal gland then releases aldosterone. To help remember that, you can spell adrenal from the word aldosterone if you use the A twice. Then the first word in aldosterone is Aldo's. Here in Washington, Missouri, they have Aldo's Pizza. Yeah, pizza's kind of salty. Sodium. So sodium gets put back in the blood. Where sodium goes, water follows. To make it simple, low blood pressure detected by juxtaglomerular apparatus. Renin is given off. The renin goes and tells the liver, hey, give us some angiotensin. Angiotensin goes to the adrenal glands, says produce aldosterone. Aldosterone says, hey, put sodium back in the blood. So the nephrons put more sodium back in the blood. Where sodium goes, water follows, keeping the blood pressure from falling more. All right, quick review. Functioning of the kidney, nephron. Active emptying the bladder, you can sing it, micturition. Term for anything related to the kidney is renal. Latin for kidney is renus, R-E-N-E-S. Greek for kidney is nephros, N-E-P-H-R-O-S, hence the nephron. Okay, the glomerulus and Bowman's capsule, collectively called, here's a hint, renal corpuscle, right there at the bottom. Okay, where does filtration take place? I told you this a million times. Right there at the Bowman's capsule, or you can say the renal corpuscle, either one. Where does the process of reabsorption take place the most? Yes, you've heard me pound this into you. The proximal convoluted tubule, 65% of sodium, chlorine, and water right back in the blood. Which part of the nephron is not permeable to water? That would be the ascending limb of the loop of Henle. Which ion affects osmotic pressure, water pressure the most? Right, where sodium goes, water follows. Yeah, it's a saltwater ocean in the background there. Okay, question. Which of the following is not normal in urine? So you learn that urea, uric acid, and creatinine are waste products. Water's there as a diluent. Yeah, protein is not. If protein's in there, that means you've got an infection that has gone clear up to the kidneys, causing inflammation, allowing protein to seep out, which is not good. That would be called glomerulonephritis. What part of the urinary system is functional in males and keeps the sperm from entering the bladder so it can go out the urethra? Right, internal urinary sphincter. Which nephrons are mainly in the outer portion of the kidney? The cortical nephrons. And nephrons that protrude deep in the middle are called juxtamedullary nephrons. All right, from September, you learned the kidneys are located behind a lot of your internal organs. That is behind the peritoneum, which would be retroperitoneal. Caffeine and alcohol cause the nephrons to reabsorb less water into the blood, which means you urinate a lot more. Therefore, they are diuretics. Okay, funny story, kind of. Diabetes mellitus. Diabetes means you're urinating a lot because you got something wrong. In this case, the pancreas is not producing enough insulin to sock away that blood sugar after you've eaten a meal. So usually the blood sugar gets stored as glycogen around the liver and the muscles. If the pancreas is not producing insulin, you get a lot of glucose. Remember, glucose gets filtered out the Bowman's capsule. If you got a whole lot of it, it's not going to get all reabsorbed back in the blood from the proximal tubule. Therefore, you got a lot of glucose coming out. Same thing here. Where glucose goes, water tends to follow. So back in the day, to test for this glucose in the urine, they would go to someone who had better taste buds than most people. That is, younger ladies who have better taste buds than men. And the older you get, your taste buds just kind of go down south anyway. So yeah, the poor young ladies would have to take the urine sample, put like a swab, a long stick, kind of like a Q-tip, stick it in there, and then swab it on their tongue and taste it. If it was sweet, sweet enough, anyway, they could taste sweetness in there, they'd say, yeah, this patient has diabetes mellitus. Pancreas ain't working that well. Another one is diabetes insipidus, which means you're peeing a lot, but there's no sugar involved. And that is due to the antidiuretic hormone not being produced as it should from the posterior pituitary gland. Antidiuretic hormone is not acting on the collecting duct and the distal convoluted tubule to reabsorb water back in the blood. Therefore, you're losing that little last few percentage of water that usually gets reabsorbed back in the blood. You're losing that, which means you could be urinating 2 to 4 liters an hour just because it's not getting reabsorbed. So homeostasis requires an intake of water and ions to equal their elimination so you keep the blood pressure where it should be. So your thirst is regulated by the hypothalamus. If the blood concentrations get too high in ions, or the blood pressure drops, you get thirsty. And then cotton mouth, that dry mucus, is our conscious way of saying, I need to drink something. Sodium, we talked about being regulated by the kidney and the hormones aldosterone and ANH. Remember the ANH in the right atrium of the heart, atrial natriuretic hormone, natrium, Na. High blood pressure, the right atrium says, whoa, too much. It releases ANH. ANH goes to the kidneys, tells them to get rid of sodium. Where sodium goes, water follows. You pee more out, and the blood pressure drops. On the converse, aldosterone is triggered when the juxtaglomerular apparatus says, whoa, blood pressure is low. So it gives off renin, which goes to the liver, which sends the angiotensin to the adrenal glands. Adrenal glands give off aldosterone. Aldosterone tells the kidneys, put sodium back in the blood. Where sodium goes, water follows, blood pressure hopefully stops dropping. Okay, potassium is also kept in a very narrow range by aldosterone. We're going to take a little break here to ask you a question. A patient presents with high urine output, yet states he hasn't been drinking caffeine and you find no glucose in his urine. What's wrong with this patient? High urine output, constantly peeing, constantly drinking. Yes, diabetes insipidus. The pituitary gland is not producing antidiuretic hormone like it should, so therefore you're losing a lot of water into urine, which means you got to drink a lot more. Physician tells you there's protein in your urine and you've had a chronic bladder infection. Well, what could the problem be? So a urinary tract infection has proceeded up your urethra into the urinary bladder. That's giving you cystitis, the bladder infection. That has progressed further up the ureters to the kidneys. When it gets that far, now you got inflammation of the glomerulus, inflammation of the nephron, inflammation of itis, glomerulonephritis, glomerulonephritis, inflammation of the glomerulus and nephron, and now proteins leaking out where it shouldn't be. Glomerulonephritis. Calcium is kept in a very narrow range too. So, calcium, you want to keep calcium levels in the blood right in a narrow range. Too much calcium, the parathyroid hormone basically goes PTH, parathyroid hormone goes spits calcium, tells the body spit calcium out. So it activates osteoclasts to chew more calcium out of bones, get rid of that calcium. Because remember, osteoblasts are always putting bone on, calcium in. Osteoclasts are always taking it out. So you can just by poor posture, you can change your posture. So keep good posture. That thing down below is not a dancing raisin, it's a dancing kidney. Back to this. Parathyroid hormone tells body get rid of excess calcium. The opposite of that would be calcitonin. That is calcium back in the bones. And that is that is it tells the body put calcium back in the bone. So it slows the osteoclast activity. Says, hey, we need calcium back in the bone. Also, phosphate and sulfates are normally reabsorbed actively back in the blood, so we keep those levels where they should be. Okay, recap. Hormone regulators, aldosterone says put sodium back in the blood, keeps the blood pressure from dropping any lower. ANH, the right atrium, detects high blood pressure, does the opposite of aldosterone, says get rid of sodium, so water follows in the urine, and you drop that blood pressure. And then ADH, antidiuretic hormone, is released from the posterior pituitary gland when you get low blood pressure, saying keep the water in the blood, makes your urine more concentrated. Again, diabetes insipidus is low ADH levels, which means you're going to lose a lot of fluid. All right, what happens if an infection makes it to the kidneys? I already said this. Your glomerulus and your nephron become inflamed. That is called glomerulonephritis. And there it is. You can pause this, look at it, study it. It allows proteins, which are usually too big to get out, into the urine. That's not good. Study and know your nephron. Told you this third part would be short. So study it, sing it. MICTURITION. Gotta go. Gotta go. Pasta la vista, baby.